This is, apparently there's 4 mothers tonight, and this is one of them, but if you're talking about a woman that's changed my life, you can't go past my mother. Dear Mum, I wanted to thank you for the time in the early 70s when I was 12 years old, and the principal of my secondary school called my father in for a serious meeting about my conduct. He presented my father with an exercise book that I'd filled with some seriously pornographic children's rhymes. The principal asked my dad if he was aware of the filth I was filling my head with. My father blithely replied, "Of course, my wife is a writer. She has the whole family out collecting these things." I wanted to thank you for allowing me to adjust the tape recorder levels on your vast collection of oral history recordings that currently reside at the National Library in Canberra, for organising your family into an egalitarian commune where a 5-year-old could cook fish fingers for dinner and stand on a stool the following night in order to reach the sink when it was his turn to do the washing up. I still love cooking and I still hate washing up. I wanted to thank you for being single-minded, opinionated, forthright and an indomitable force of nature, for giving me a sense of self-motivation and the drive to complete whatever I started, no matter how agonising it became. I wanted to thank you for causing me to spend thousands of dollars and years in therapy because you thought it made sense to you to use your oversized underpants as my stand-in pillowcase when the laundry fell behind. It's true. My therapist, who is a Freudian, got very excited when I told her this story, saying, "We have a lot of issues we have to work through." And I hadn't even told her about the diaphragm in the bathroom, what I was doing with that. I said I wouldn't say that line. I wanted to thank you for pulling me out of primary school in 1969 and taking an entire year off work so the entire family could drive around Australia whilst I read Superman comics and did my timetables in the back of the Toyota Land Cruiser. It cured me of camping for the rest of my life and gave me a unique vision of this insanely large country. I wanted to thank you for experimenting with my education by sending me to a free school where I learned how to think freely and follow my own interests rather than forcibly learning things by rote. I also wanted to thank you for pulling me out of that free school when it became obvious that I couldn't spell, that I had no understanding of grammar, and I hadn't written an essay for at least 3 years. But I did know a lot about growing vegetables, film theory, liquid theatre, smoking dope, playing cards and meditation. I wanted to thank you for being an oral historian, an author, a school librarian and an inspiring school teacher whose students still contact me today to say, "Your mother changed my life. She was the first person to ever believe in me." This could get ugly. I wanted to thank you for allowing me to hear people describe you as infuriating, inspiring, combative, impossible, a force to behold, a hell of a woman, and a complete pain in the ass. You seem to enjoy all of it with great glee. I wanted to thank you for your belief in the power and importance of the stories and experiences of the individual from all walks of life and the knowledge that they needed to be recorded before they were forgotten. For being an activist, for keeping watch over the shifting fortunes of the working class, for being passionate about your politics, for your belief in workers' rights and working class history, and for fiercely campaigning against the capitalist classes, bureaucracies and governments of all persuasions. I know I'm not impartial, you would often say. Impartiality is crap. It's like saying I'm not political. I wanted to thank you for drowning my childhood in political buttons, banners, stickers, pamphlets and posters, for sticking up for me when I was removed from class for wearing anti-Vietnam War buttons and for having long hair and wearing a headband. I wanted to thank you for taking me to the all-night vigil outside Pentridge Prison at the age of 7, where I held up a candle and wore a sandwich board as we protested and tried to stop the impending execution of Ronald Ryan, the last man to be hung in Australia. There were so many people there that I really did think we were going to do it. I wanted to thank you for the blur of marches, meetings and picket lines, for the May Days, the Hiroshima Days, the Vietnam moratoriums, the Save Our Son marches, the People for Nuclear Disarmament marches, This could go on. The International Year of Peace, Arts Action for Peace, Palm Sunday, Save Our Schools, which were the Jeff Kennett years, Save Albert Park, Jeff Kennett again, Hands Off Our Library, still more Kennett, Wharfie strikes, miners' strikes, teachers' strikes, and dental mechanic strikes. Dad was a dental mechanic. I wanted to thank you for selecting my father Werner as one of as the one you threw a pair of boots at and yelled, "Are you going to marry me, you bastard, or what?" Dad was a refugee of Nazi Germany and a teenage inhabitant of the internment camps of Australia after he was deported from England for being a potential Nazi spy and sympathiser at the tender age of 16. Neither the British or Australian governments of the time seemed to understand the difference between a German Jew and a German Nazi. So as soon as he'd escaped certain death at the hands of the Nazis and arrived in the UK, the British government bundled him aboard a prison ship and sent him off to the colonies to be interned as an illegal alien. Enemy alien, sorry. This made him completely politically correct in your eyes, and it wasn't long before his calm demeanour, his loyalty, his love of music, of cinema, his own rich history and the first-hand knowledge of man's inhumanity to man helped shape our lives and teach me so much about everything, especially how to love. He was the perfect counterpoint to your tumultuous, impossible nature and part of a 60-year partnership that was to become a dedication to lives built on humanist principles. I need a drink before this one. I wanted to thank you for the time in the early 70s when you were teaching at McRobertson Girls High and you discovered a group of schoolgirls fighting over the selling of their sexual favours to passing Albert Park businessmen. One of the girls had been charging 50 cents to do what the others were getting a full $2 for. And instead of admonishing them, you lectured them on the values of unionism and how all the girls should agree upon a set rate for their services and never undercut their fellow worker, because that was tantamount to scabbing, and as we all know, there was no lower life form than a scab. This example was to ram home the union movement's slogan of "United we stand, divided we fall" to me in a way I will never forget. I wanted to thank you for inspiring me with the prodigious amount of work, book, letters, papers, ventures, activism, relationships, ideas and achievements that you were able to pack into a single lifetime, a quantity that is simply outstanding by anyone's standards. At the same time as we were raising a family, you were able to be actively involved in the New Theatre, the Eureka Youth League, the Victorian Folk Music Society, Tradition Magazine, the Australian Folklore Expedition, the Boree Log Folk Club, the Colonial Bush Dance Society, the Pram Factory Flea Market, Brinsley Road Alternative School, Friends of the Earth, the Victorian Secondary Teachers Association, Collingwood and Richmond Community Centres, and the National Oral History Association. The books you wrote included Weevils in the Flower, The Immigrants, Cinderella, Dressed in Yellow, Shocking, 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 Under the Hook and Weevils at Work. I wanted to thank you for the incredible legacy you achieved in bringing a truth to history by giving a voice to those who live it. The men and women whose lives and stories are recorded in your work will go on touching people and urging others to maintain the fight to keep the world a decent and humane place. I also wanted to thank you for today's very relevant and not so unique story, apparently, of being hit upon at a tender age by Marie Cardy's male chauvinist pig of a grandfather, Frank. They were her words, not mine. Whilst you were helping the Communist Party publish the first edition of his book, Power Without Glory, an anecdote you would tell repeatedly with gleeful outrage and pride. I wanted to thank you for the motto on your coat of arms handed down to you by your brother John, Nix illegitimus carborundum, or never let the bastards grind you down. And I wanted to thank you, if I've timed this correctly, for always having the last word, or in this case, the last image. The Age film critic Keith Connolly once told me that there were only 3 women in his life that he was afraid of: his wife, his daughter, and Wendy Lowenstein. I will love and thank you always, your son Richard.